All right. What's up, everybody? It's Corey, host of the Greaseball Podcast. Welcome into first round recap of the 2023 NFL Draft. Officially part of the FFSN, Fans First Sports Network, Brews, Brawls, and Brotherly Love, Philadelphia Eagles Podcast Network. Appreciate you taking part. Look, what a night it was for the Birds, right? This draft. You kind of got the tone set early when you had Houston trade up to make back-to-back picks, right? Like you don't see that a lot. And so that set the tone for the rest of the night. Then you see teams moving up and down the board, and it just kind of looking at the board and the way things went. We'll get into the Birds here momentarily, but Devin Witherspoon at 5, hell of a pick by Seattle. It was kind of like, is Jalen Carter going to go there? Paris Johnson to Arizona at 6 was it's a sensible pick, but probably a bit of a surprise. You know what I mean? And then you have Bijan Robinson to Atlanta at 8, which is one that I know pissed a lot of Eagles fans off because he was the guy that. If you were to, it was like Ricky Williams in 1999, right? When the Birds took Donovan McNabb, Ricky Williams was the guy that everybody wanted it to, right? Also, coincidentally, a running back out of Texas. And, I understood the logic, even though obviously, as it's been said countless times, this goes against everything that Howie Roseman believes in draft mentality-wise and his philosophy and his track record. But I understood the logic. I mean, you have people like ESP on Twitter that were obsessing over Bijan Robinson at 10, right? It almost seemed like somebody had a gun to his head and was telling him, you're going to tweet this motherfucker. You need to get this out there. And it almost seemed like his life was at stake. But he was the popular pick. And so when he goes to Atlanta at 8, you kind of, especially after his mom shows up tonight to the draft with an Eagles green dress on, right, a midnight green dress. Everybody on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the Eagles pockets of social media is going, yo, Miss Robinson's got a green dress on. What's this mean, right? And, he'd come out and said he'd love to play for Jalen Hurts. And so social media does what social media does, and it takes off. He goes at 8, which makes all signs point to Jalen Carter's the guy. So now the question is, do you stay at 10? And you make the minor move up with 9 to Chicago. All you give up is a 4th rounder. And to be clear, let me just say this. I was not in favor of all these rumors in terms of trading up to 5 and to 6 and giving up a handful of picks maybe to move up and go and get Jalen Carter. But to be able to go up and get him by only giving up a 4th rounder in next year's draft, when Javon Hargrave is going to comp you that pick back, you essentially swap Javon Hargrave, a defensive tackle who had a hell of a year, don't get me wrong. He was part of the double-digit sack club for the Birds this year. You swap him, at 30 years old for arguably the best player in the draft. You get that youth there and save about $20 million in the process. This is why Howie Roseman's so damn good. For all of the shit he does sometimes that'll drive you nuts, this is why he's widely recognized now as the best GM in the NFL, okay? And he goes and he moves one spot up and takes a guy that in many mocks a month or two ago was going first overall to Chicago. The debate was, do you go Will Anderson or do you take Jalen Carter? How he gets him, you fill that void that's left by the departure of Javon Hargrave to the San Francisco 49ers, and you make it to now you have, for the next 5 to 7 years and possibly beyond, the tandem along your interior defensive line of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. That's a fucking problem. And look, Jalen Carter has the red flags, the off the field stuff. You know, is he motivated? Does he give it everything in practice? Can you coach him hard? And there were the reports out there that I'm sure you've seen where it's the one guy that could keep his ass in line was Jordan Davis. Obviously, Jordan Davis is an Eagle, so you think in theory we've got the guy that can check him. And so these two together have the potential to be historical, okay? This Georgia thing becomes a theme, and it's funny because I put out on YouTube, I did a final Eagles mock that came out this morning, the morning of the 27th, and I had mocked Peter Skoronski to the Birds at 10 and Adibaware as the 30th pick. And I titled it From Georgia to Northwestern. And now that was after, obviously, last year, Jordan Davis, you move up for him, you take Nakobe Dean in the third round, and you double down on Georgia again because you're looking at the board. And me personally, and I think I speak for a lot of Eagles fans when I say, you didn't expect Howie to make both of these picks. You didn't expect 2 first-round picks to be made. Look, as a draft mark is somebody that the draft is fucking, I'm Tony Montana and the draft is my cocaine. I was praying all along, please make both of these first-round picks. You know what I mean? I think the last time the Eagles had 2 first-rounders and actually made them both was in 1993. I was 5 at the time. One of those was Leonard Renfro. I don't remember who the other one was. It was somebody that ended up being Cheeks. So they were inconsequential, right? And now I'm 35, turned 35 today. Hell of a birthday present was these 2 Georgia defenders. And to see the Birds actually make both of these picks, and you're looking at the board fall, and Nolan Smith continually falls down the board, and he's somebody that Eagles fans were eyeing at number 10. Okay, if the Birds took him at 10 or at 9, rather, Eagles fans would have been fired up by this. It's a need. It fits the Howie Roseman mold. It keeps a strength. You build in the trenches, and that's what Nolan Smith would have done at the top half of the first round, let alone you're looking at, Green Bay goes Lucas Van Ness at 13. The Jets go Will McDonald at 15. That was kind of a shocker. Detroit taking Jack Campbell at 18. And look, I love Jack Campbell. Okay, he's a throwback. I love the guy. But him at 18 was, I don't know, Detroit had a wonky draft after everything they've done right. And look, to take Jahmyr Gibbs when you've got DeAndre Swift and they brought in somebody as well, I can't remember. And to follow that up with Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell, although feels like a Dan Campbell guy. So from that standpoint, I get it. But it also feels like a guy maybe you could have moved up for in the second round if you wanted him that bad. But I digress. I don't want to get bogged down here too much in Detroit. My point is they were somebody that you kind of see maybe Nolan Smith going to, and they go Jack Campbell. Looking down here, Baltimore at 22, Zay Flowers, hell of a pick. Minnesota, they go Jordan Addison. Great pick there as well. You're looking at some of these teams that you would think would take edge rushers. Cincinnati, I thought for sure was going to go Joey Porter Jr., but they go Miles Murphy out of Clemson. And again, personally to me, I'm going, if an edge rusher is what you want, I mean, this is personal preference. It always is with the draft, but I would go Nolan Smith over Miles Murphy 10 out of 10 times. It's not even debatable based off of what I've seen. And then you hope the Saints, they're at 29. As you're watching Nolan Smith, we're not moving back yet. Nobody's moved up to the 30th pick. We're standing put. And with the 29th pick, the New Orleans Saints take Brian Bresee. And Nolan Smith's still there. And now you have this. The whole time in my brain, I'm like, it's got to be Nolan Smith. It has to be Nolan Smith. It absolutely has to be Nolan Smith. But then you look at the board and you go, fuck, Joey Porter Jr. still here. How nasty would that be if you have James Bradbury, Darius Slay, and you've got Joey Porter Jr. out there? Right? You get youth. You get depth there. Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama, still there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, obviously, after long, drawn-out bullshit, goes to Detroit. He's teammates with Jack Campbell now. And but that's where he is. So safety is a bit of a need. You have Reed Blankenship, which if you've been a listener of this pod, you know I love me some Reed Blankenship, and you bring in Terrell Edmonds, which is a fine pickup, but there's no depth there at safety, and Brian Branch is that difference maker. He's a Nick Saban guy. Nick Saban trusted him, for fuck's sake. That tells you everything you need to know about Brian Branch as a football player. So you start thinking about it, and you go, well, maybe Nolan Smith isn't as clear-cut a pick as you think he would be. But then you think about it, and it's like, you know what? If this was a guy that we were all okay taking at 10, and he's still on the board here at 30, with the traits that he has and the ceiling that he has, he's got to be the pick right here. He has to be. Because it's a deep corner class. You've got, you know, guys like Jartavius Martin. There's a few more that are escaping me right now, but there are other corners you can get. You know, there's safety help that you can get. Antonio Johnson, Jamie Robinson, Sidney Brown. You can get, these are positions that Howie doesn't typically value a ton anyway. And look at the defense, okay? This defensive line is fucking absurd. It's almost like I saw a meme where it was like, here's the Eagles' defensive line. And it was a picture of the 92 Dream Team, right? With MJ and Barkley and Magic and Bird and all those guys. And that's kind of what it feels like. And I'm not trying to be a Vince Young here and make a Dream Team comp. That's not what I'm doing. But when you look at the depth chart, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And if you're the rest of the league, you've got to be looking around to a degree and going, how in the fuck did we allow this to happen? Micah Parsons was on, I believe, ESPN, losing his mind after Jalen Carter got picked 9th overall, right? And it's funny how these relationships in college football, like for years it was Bill Belichick and Nick Saban guys, right? Because they had their connection, they're good friends. And Tom Coughlin, when he was with the Giants, loved Syracuse guys because he had ties there. It's interesting to see how this Georgia North, this Philly Bulldogs thing, has kind of organically developed, right? I don't think when Jordan Davis was the pick last year in the first round, 13th overall, I don't think that I don't even think Howie Roseman foresaw this shit coming, right? It was just one of those things where Nakobe Dean was such great value in the third round last year. How can you pass him up, right? And it's the same thing here with both of these guys. It's just, how does the draft board fall? You have arguably the best player in the draft falls to you. You move up one spot to take him at 9, and then at 30, a guy falls in your lap. You don't even have to move, and Nolan Smith falls to you at 30. So you look around now, and you have all of these guys that came up together that were college teammates. This is the thing with Jalen Carter, because I'm a big believer in character and red flags, and you don't take unnecessary risks, okay? Jalen Carter, his best opportunity for success in the NFL is with the Birds. You take him and you put him in, let's see. I've been looking at this draft board for months, and now you take Jalen Carter and put him on the Raiders. Okay, say he goes 7th overall. He's not going to have, he's the same player, but he's not going to have the same career that he will now in Philly. And I don't say that as an Eagles fan. I say that as a fact. You come into a locker room where a culture is established. You've got that winning environment, that winning vibe. Jalen Hurts is the leader of this thing. And he just got paid. He's not going anywhere. And we know how he is. We know what he values, right? How did he say it? Nothing changes but the weather. And Jalen Carter is now as the youngest guy there amongst his brethren, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and Nolan Smith as well. He's getting there at the same time as Nolan Smith, but you're low guy on the totem pole now. You're rookie. And now you have to live up to the standard that Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean have witnessed. That's pressure. Those are the types of things that will make somebody like that go, you know what? It'll make them think twice before they take reps off in practice, before they get an attitude if they're being coached too hard or whatever the case may be. So it had to be Philly for Jalen Carter. He didn't have to be the pick for us. It's like wrestling back in the day, right? When whoever was the world champion would say, you know, I don't have to beat you, you have to beat me. That's what this is for Jalen Carter. We didn't have to pick him. He needed us to pick him to give him the best chance at having a successful career. And, you know, look, for all the talk of Stoutland University on the offensive line, right? Jeff Stoutland, best offensive line coach in football. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Tracy Rocker as the defensive line coach. And that guy is fucking tenacious. He's great. I love that guy. It was a hell of a hire by Sirianni. You know, he was a college star, played in the league. Just a tough, hard-nosed dude and a great coach. And when you have not only Jordan Davis, but you have a guy like Tracy Rocker coaching him, those are the types of things that make a difference. Again, you put him in Oakland, you put him in Atlanta, you put him in one of those places, he's not going to have the same career. And so it's just interesting to see how organically this Georgia North thing has developed. I find it interesting. I do. What are your thoughts? Give us leave us a comment. Feel free to do it on our YouTube page or leave it here on the podcast as well. I definitely think, look, this was the most satiated I've ever been walking away from the first round of an NFL draft. Like, and then, you know, before we get out of here, you find out just before the draft starts, before Carolina goes on the clock, you find out that Arizona tampers with Jonathan Gannon as if people were beating down his door to hire his ass. But you tamper with Jonathan Gannon after the NFC Championship game, and there's news of a settlement where basically the 94th pick in the third round now for the Birds becomes the 66th pick. We swap threes with Arizona, and they got our fifth rounder next year. So now you have two more picks, you know, in the next 30, 35. You have 4 top 70 picks if Howie doesn't do what Howie does and he moves around. You know, that's a worst case scenario. So you have a rare opportunity coming off of a 3-point loss in a Super Bowl that, not to be that guy, but could have easily been a Super Bowl win had a ball bounced a certain way here and there, had certain calls gone a certain way. And we're not the only team, the Eagles aren't the only team ever that could say that. Okay? I'm not saying the Super Bowl 57 is an outlier. But what I'm saying is you were that close. And now you've taken your strength, one of your strengths, and you have made it that much stronger. And now you have 2 more opportunities tomorrow night in the second and third round. Early third round, too. And, you know, I don't have the board in front of me right now. We'll look at it tomorrow, and I'll kind of give you a few guys I've got my eye on with those picks, 62 and 66. And we'll take a look at it, you know. And the way this draft went tonight, there's no telling. There's really no predicting. There never is really with this draft. But when you're in 2023 and fucking Jack Campbell goes 18th overall, you know, that kind of lets you know things are going to get a little weird. So there's really no way of predicting, but you can look at the depth there and kind of project and see what Howie Roseman's going to do and take a look at who we want him to take tomorrow night with the 62nd and 66th pick. Let us know who you are hoping the Eagles take on the night of round 2 and 3. Hit us up on social media at Grease Pole Podcast on Instagram. On the podcast platforms, you can subscribe. Again, Grease Pole Podcast on the Fans First Sports Network, FFSN. That's the Brews, brawls, and brotherly love. There's a lot of alliteration right here. I've had a few shots of Jaeger tonight, so I tried to get it out smoothly. Brews, brawls, and brotherly love. Philadelphia Eagles Podcast Network. Check that out. Leave us a review. Hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. And we're also over on YouTube as well for draft content if you want to check that out. YouTube.com/GreasePolePodcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening, the rest of your day, whatever the case may be. We'll see you back here tomorrow as we'll talk about who's still on the board for rounds 2 and 3. We'll see you then. As always, go Birds.